Hey, Kathleen. There.
Sorry.
I'm French, by the way. The Pacers played an NBA Paris game,
Yeah.
and there is some also the NCAA games in Paris. How
Mm-hmm.
much would you like to see a WNBA Paris game to
I would
showcase
love
your
it. I would,
talent in
yeah, I
Europe?
would love it. I would go anywhere and play. I think that would be, as I said earlier, like,
5 words. That is all it took on the single most chaotic day of the WNBA offseason. The day Chicago lost its biggest star, its most polarizing draw, the face of everything they were trying to build. Caitlin Clark typed 5 words on her phone, hit send, and quietly took over an entire city that does not even belong to her team. And while every media outlet in America spent the next 48 hours screaming about trades and franchise malpractice and dysfunction, the Indiana Fever were sitting back watching their blueprint execute itself in real time. Nobody was paying attention to what was actually happening. Let's fix that right now. April 6th, 2026, the WNBA off-season officially opens, and the first shockwave lands immediately. The Chicago Sky trade Angel Reese, 2-time All-Star, face of the franchise, the most polarizing figure in women's basketball, to the Atlanta Dream. The return 2 first-round picks that will probably land somewhere in the mid-teens. CBS Sports gives the Sky an actual letter grade of F. Fans are devastated. Former players are shaking their heads. The entire basketball conversation collapses into one question. What is Chicago doing? And right in the dead center of that catastrophe, right when Sky fans are processing the loss of their biggest draw, Caitlin Clark pulls out her phone. The Cubs had just posted their 150th anniversary cookie challenge, asking fans to submit recipes for Wrigley Field concession stands. Clark, a lifelong Cubs fan, quote tweets it, with 5 words that detonated every timeline simultaneously. Would love to be the taste tester. If you have been tracking what this channel has been saying about Clark's cultural footprint all season, you already knew something like this was coming. Hit that like button right now, because what we're about to unpack is the most underreported story of this entire offseason. And it goes a lot deeper than cookies. The Cubs responded within minutes. Absolutely. And Chicago exploded. Fans flooded social media. One person posted that the Sky had just made room on the roster for her. Another joked she should pitch for the Cubs while she was at it. Caitlin Clark was trending in Chicago, not Angel Reese, not the Sky, not the trade that the national sports media spent 2 days dissecting. Caitlin Clark was the dominant story in Chicago on the day Chicago lost its franchise player. Sit with that for a moment, because what happened on April 6th is not a cute celebrity interaction. Music is not a fun viral moment for the slow news cycle. What you witnessed is the single most significant display of cultural dominance in the history of women's professional sports. Clark did not hold a press conference. She did not release a statement. She did not make a single call to any agent or front office. She typed 5 words on a phone and redirected the emotional gravity of an entire major American sports city. A city that was actively in mourning for its own team toward herself, without playing a minute of basketball, without any organizational infrastructure behind the moment. Just 5 words and 3.2 million people paying attention to whatever she does next. Now, here is where every other channel covering this story completely loses the thread. They treat the tweet as the story. The cookie exchange is the story. The viral moment is the story. The Chicago fans reacting is the story. That is the surface. That is the visible layer. The real story is the mechanism underneath it. The reason to tweet about. A baking competition carries this kind of weight, and what that mechanism means for everything Indiana is building this offseason. Because Clark's cultural gravity is not separate from the Fever's championship strategy. It is the strategy. It is the engine. It is the reason the blueprint works. Let's connect those dots. Start with Kelsey Mitchell. Heading into this offseason, Mitchell was a free agent. She had legitimate market value. She's a supermax caliber guard who could have tested the open market and generated real competition for her contract. She did not. She signed a $1.4 million supermax and locked herself into Indiana before free agency even heated up. Why? Mitchell said it directly. Clark stated it publicly on national television. telling the world that signing Kelsey Mitchell was Indiana's first priority and calling her running mate. When a most recognizable athlete in your sport goes on NBC and tells the country she needs you as her teammate, you do not test the market. You run toward what is being offered, because what is being offered is a seat at the table where history gets made. Lexi Hull operates under the same calculus, just from a slightly different angle. Hull is a restricted free agent with the legal right to explore her options. She spent last season on the court for every game the Fever played, and specifically watched what this team looked music like during the 13 games Clark was actually healthy and competing. She saw 16.5 points per game. She saw 8.8 assists, numbers that reshape every cutter's opportunity, every corner shooter's shot quality, every secondary scorer's usage. Hull watched an ecosystem from the inside that most players in this league would sacrifice contract money to be part of. She is not leaving it. The restricted qualifying offer is as good as accepted before the ink has fully dried anywhere. And then there's Sophie Cunningham, who tells the most complete version of the Clark Effect story. Cunningham is an unrestricted free agent. She could go anywhere in the league right now. She has demonstrated value as a tough, versatile wing who defends hard and brings an edge that championship teams need. But Cunningham's entire career trajectory shifted because of what her proximity to Clark created. She became Clark's enforcer, the player who stepped into confrontations, who protected her teammate at personal cost, who chipped a tooth defending Clark against Jacqueline Sheldon, and became a viral sensation doing it. Her social media following cracked 1 million followers, anti-path toward fame, and a legitimate championship run for a fresh start somewhere that does not have that foundation. Cunningham is coming back. That is not a prediction. That outcome is already embedded in the structure of what Clark has built around herself. 3 key roster pieces locked in, or essentially locked in before the rest of the league's front offices had even finished their first internal planning sessions. Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Erica Timpson already under contract before free agency opened. That is 6 foundational pieces secured in the first 48 hours of the offseason. No other team in this league moved with that clarity, that speed, or that level of organizational conviction about what it was trying to build. While other franchises were still debating their own priorities, Indiana had already built the frame of the house, and that is only the visible part of the blueprint. The part that nobody is discussing yet, the part that this story has only just begun to reveal, is what Indiana is targeting with the space they have left, and why the players they're targeting are already leaning toward Indianapolis before a single official conversation has taken place. Because the Clark Effect does not stop at the players already wearing Fever uniforms. It reaches across the entire music league into free agent living rooms, into player evaluation sessions, into conversations between veterans and their agents about what best fit actually means in this era of women's basketball. And when those conversations happen, Indiana keeps winning them before the negotiation even starts. Here's what I want you to do right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were a WNBA free agent this offseason, would you take less money to play on this Indiana Fever roster? Because the answer to that question is not just interesting. Music, it is the entire argument. And the fact that you are probably already forming a yes in your head is exactly the point. Let's talk about Alana Smith, because this is the acquisition that changes Indiana from a contender into something scarier. Smith was the co-defensive player of the year last season. She averaged close to 2 blocks per game while shooting near 40% from 3 on real volume. A combination of rim protection and perimeter shooting that almost does not exist anywhere else in the league at her level. Multiple credible reports are whispering about genuine mutual interest between Smith and Indiana heading into this music free agency period. Not officially confirmed. This is firmly in the territory of early market signals and source conversations rather than done deals. But the fit is not just good. It is surgical. The Fever's one consistent structural vulnerability last season was interior defense and frontcourt size. Pairing Smith with Aaliyah Boston would Give Indiana a defensive front court that playoff opponents would spend weeks of film study trying to solve. Boston's versatility and skill offensively. Smith's rim deterrence and floor spacing defensively. That combination does not currently exist on any roster in this league. Then there is Azura Stevens, who made her interest in Indiana visible in a way that athletes almost never do publicly. She took to TikTok, called Indianapolis a quote nice little city, and engaged directly with Fever fans in the comments section. Players do not do that accidentally. Players do not voluntarily tease fan bases for a franchise they have zero intention of joining. Stevens is a versatile wing scorer who can function as a secondary offensive piece off the bench while providing additional floor spacing. She is exactly the archetype Indiana identified for their targeted free agent search, a specific player for a specific structural need. And she is sending signals loud enough that anyone watching closely can read them. Before we go deeper into the financial architecture behind all of this, and the salary cap section is going to make a lot of doubters very uncomfortable if this kind of investigation is what keeps you coming back to this channel. Consider becoming a member. Your support is what makes it possible for us to keep going this deep when everyone else is staying at the surface. The join button is right below this video. Now, the salary cap, because this is where the critics think they have the argument, and I want to dismantle that argument completely. The 2026 WNBA salary cap stands at $7 million. Indiana has approximately $3.4 million already committed to Clark, Mitchell, and Boston, 3 All-Stars, consuming roughly half the total payroll. That leaves $3.6 million for 9 more roster spots. Add meaningful raises for Hull and Cunningham under the evolving collective bargaining landscape, and the working number drops to somewhere around $2.5 million for 7 additional players. The critics hear those numbers and immediately reach for the top-heavy roster argument. The cap is going to kill them. They cannot build depth. The math does not work. Stop. Music. That analysis is not just wrong. It is backward. The cap does not threaten Indiana's blueprint. The cap reveals how sophisticated Indiana's blueprint actually is. Championship roster construction under a hard salary cap has never been about spending the most money. It has always been about spending it in precisely the right places and then filling the remainder with exactly the right people. Indiana's plan reads like a textbook example of how this is supposed to work. You commit your maximum resources to the 3 players who define your ceiling: Clark, Mitchell, Boston. Half the cap, completely worth it. You pay your critical role players, Hull, Cunningham, raises that reflect genuine contribution without overpaying for perceived market premium. You sign one targeted impact free agent at somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000 to surgically address your most urgent structural need. Then you fill out the remaining spots with veterans on minimum deals who have made a conscious decision to prioritize a championship opportunity over a larger contract elsewhere. And you use your draft pick to add a productive rookie on a cheap, controllable deal who can contribute immediately in a role player capacity. 12 players, 3 stars, 2 key role players, 1 targeted impact addition, 6 minimum contributors. That is the blueprint. That is also, for the record, exactly how the Golden State Warriors won 4 championships, not 12 max contracts, not an all-star at every position. 3 elite players at the top: Curry, Thompson, Green, and a roster built around specific competencies and high character at every other spot. Indiana is running the Warriors playbook in the WNBA, adjusting only for salary scale. The strategy underneath is identical. But the Fever have one structural advantage that Golden State never possessed at peak Dynasty. They have the most attractive, ring-chasing destination in their sport. Every league produces veterans in the later stages of their career who will consciously accept below-market contracts to play for a legitimate contender. This is documented behavior across every major American professional sport for those players in the WNBA right now. Indiana offers something no other franchise can match simultaneously. A legitimate championship caliber roster built around a transcendent talent, a fan base that fills buildings and treats this team with a kind of emotional Investment that most franchises never develop. A $78 million practice facility coming online that will be the most advanced in the entire WNBA, and the opportunity to share a locker room with the most famous athlete in women's sports history. Veterans who are exhausted from losing seasons, from playing in empty gyms, from being on franchises going nowhere. Those players are going to call Amber Cox and say whatever the minimum is they are in, and Indiana is going to have options. They're that other front offices simply do not get to consider. If someone in your life is still sleeping on what Indiana is building, share this video with them right now, because the next section is the one that reframes the entire offseason. Let's zoom all the way out, because when you look at individual moves, Mitchell signed, Hull offered, Cunningham returning, Smith interested, you see a series of good roster decisions. When you look at the full chessboard, you see something completely different. You see a front office that is not reacting to the market. They are shaping it. Step 1. Secure the core immediately, done in the first 48 hours. Step 2. Target free agents who fill specific structural needs. Not stars, not brand names, specific competencies at specific positions. Smith and Stevens are not random targets. They are answers to exact questions. Step 3. Use the draft to add productive talent on minimum salary. Indiana's number 10 pick, music, is not an afterthought. In a $7 million cap environment, a productive rookie on a cheap deal is a genuine competitive advantage. Step 4. Let music, the Clark effect, close every remaining conversation, because when free agents sit down with their agents and line up Indiana against every other option, roster talent, coaching quality, fan environment, facility, cultural visibility, brand exposure, Indiana wins that comparison almost every time without even trying. That is a complete system, not a reaction to what other teams are doing, not a scramble to fill holes, a pre-designed, sequenced, ruthlessly efficient architecture that operates on multiple levels simultaneously and uses Clark's gravitational pull as the force that makes every other piece function. And the cookie tweet is not just a fun story about a viral moment. It is the proof of concept. It is the demonstration that this gravity is real, measurable, and operating at a scale that no other player in women's sports history has achieved. She can dominate a news cycle without playing basketball. She could take over the biggest sports city in the Midwest, music, with 5 words on her phone. She can make an entire league's worth of free agents want to join her team just by being exactly who she already is. May 9th, Dallas Wings. Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That is when the regular season begins. That is when the rest of the league gets its first live look at what Indiana has actually assembled. And based on every signal this offseason has sent, every signing, every free agent conversation, every TikTok comment from a player in Indianapolis living room, what the Wings and everyone watching are going to see is not a team getting ready to compete. It is a team getting ready to define an era. Subscribe and hit the notification bell right now, because our opening night breakdown drops the moment that game ends and the conversation we're going to have after that. First look at this roster is one you do not want to come to late. The Dynasty question is no longer hypothetical. The foundation has been poured. The only thing left is watching it rise.